Rachel Herrera here with another episode of Data Detective, and today we're going to talk about composable product analytics, why it's hard, but I think it's totally worth it. Because if you've ever really tried to build your own stack of an analytics solution, you know it's not as easy as it looks, but when it works, it really can work for the right teams. And so let's start first with talking about exactly what is composable and how we should think about it. Because ultimately, a composable stack is simply just saying, hey, I have a bunch of different components of my analytics platform in this case, and I want to buy the best in class for each of these pieces. I've got my data collection piece here, my data warehouse, maybe some sort of modeling, and then like my analytics visualization layer. Rather than buying a single all-in-one solution, kind of full stack platform, I'd rather buy the individual pieces and connect them myself. And so ultimately this means more control and flexibility, but you have to make sure that you can get it right. And this can be challenging for some teams. So let's talk about why this is hard. Where do teams struggle, right? Because I think it comes down to sort of three main things. The first is a lot of what we just talked about, the complexity of the system. Because if a complexity increases, oftentimes what that means is you're going to need more expertise and more specialty to make sure that system's working as expected. Because if I have, let's say, those 4 components that I mentioned above, now they all have to talk to each other, and I have to be the one that helps coordinate that communication, that flow of information and data. I have to make sure they're working as expected. The other is around, the data quality piece, because in the data quality side of things, now you're responsible for the data collection piece, so you have to make sure that you've got some sort of data quality checks in place, some systems that are letting you know if the data coming in is what you expect or maybe out of the norm, and then somewhere that you can go and check that and make sure that you have a plan in place to go fix or correct bad data or at least identify it. Also around the quality piece is around the governance. So not only are you now responsible for putting the data in, let's say, table A, you also have to make sure that it gets to table B successfully and, it's got the right visibility on it. This is meant to be an eyeball. And so all of those things need to be part of the strategy as you're talking about, what do we want this data to do for us? And the good news is a lot of tools have this built in, but it's a thing that you need to think about. It doesn't just happen natively. And the last thing is around your team's skill set. Be honest with yourself about who do I need and see to make a system like this work for me, and do I have them today? Because this needs some sort of a data engineering resource or a really tech savvy PM or just general engineer that can help orchestrate all this stuff that needs to happen right here to make your system work appropriately and understands fundamentally the architecture of the whole thing. Let's say you have those things in place. Now, why is a tool or at least an approach like this totally worth it? Well, I think the most important piece here is the full control that you get. Because ultimately, when you own all of these different components, now you're not locked into how a vendor would describe their sort of data collection method. You can set your own, or how that data should be stored and organized. You can derive and create your own data models. And so this affords you the full control to not lock you into somebody else's opinion of, for example, what is a session or what is a user. You can define all of those things yourself. The other is now you have a single source of truth, because this is going to allow your entire organization to make use of this information. And your CDW, in a lot of these cases, is sort of the center of the universe, and everything else kind of orbits around it and takes its information from this single source of truth, which is great because now you're all making decisions off of the same information. The other thing is around future proofing, because as your business grows, rather than buying some single point solution, now you're able to instead break it up and manage the pieces individually. So let's say your data collection methodology is perfectly fine. You need to really improve upon how you're analyzing and visualizing that data. Now you can just go and buy another tool to do this piece, rather than having to go and retool the entire stack, which is what you would have to do if you did sort of the all-in-one approach. And then lastly is around the cost efficiency piece. So if you're thinking of the all-in-one solution, so let's put that here, you're going to pay a single price tag for all of the features and capabilities that you may or may not need. And these prices can just sort of hockey stick and balloon up and to the right, and you don't really have a lot of control or ability to scale it down on the places that you know you don't necessarily need to invest that much in. When you're in the composable world, now each of these different components have their own dollar sign associated with them. And you can kind of spend more in one area, reduce spend in another area depending on what it is you need. So you've got a lot more flexibility when it comes to how you want to control your price. But ultimately, this approach isn't going to be good for absolutely every team. There's some teams that need that all-in-one solution, and that's perfectly fine. But if you feel like you're ready for a composable approach, hopefully I've given you some good tips of things to think about, but also ways that it's worth it so you can go make that case internally. And if you're thinking about doing this, or maybe you're in the middle of it, I'd love to hear any questions, or drop a comment with us and let us know if we got it right. Thank you.